I'm in beautiful, sunny South Africa, Cape Town, a good Erev Shabbos. Right behind me over here is Lion's Head. Get a pretty clear sky and the ocean. And of course behind me are the clouds in the mountain, as you can see. Gorgeous views. But you know, this week's Torah portion is the Parsha of Re'eh. And Re'eh is really telling us that it's not only what you see, but how you view it, how you see it. You know the story about these two ladies in a restaurant, and one says to the other, the food here is terrible, and the other one says back to her, yeah, and the portions are so small. Sometimes we love seeing things in a negative way. No matter how many ways you could twist it to positive, we're going to see it in a negative way. But what I wanted to share to you is something interesting from this week's portion. Because in this week's Torah portion, we read the laws of kosher a second time. We read them earlier in Leviticus, and now the Torah repeats the laws of kosher. And when it comes to here, the Torah enumerates, I think, 22 birds that are non-kosher. The rest are all kosher. And one of the birds that the Torah enumerates here that it doesn't enumerate in Leviticus is the bird called the Ra'ah. Ra'ah, similar to the word Re'eh, which means the sea. But what does the Gemara say? The Talmud tells us a remarkable thing. Now, why is this bird called Ra'ah? Because it's able to be in Babylon and see a dead carcass in Israel, in Jerusalem. That's 500 miles away. It's able to see across that and be able to notice the dead carcass. So the questions are a few. Firstly, why does the Torah mention it now and not in Leviticus originally? Secondly, why does the Talmud find the best way to illustrate its good vision by telling us that it could be in Babylon and see a dead corpse, a dead carcass in Israel? Is there no better analogy to give about its eyesight than a dead carcass? And thirdly is the most important question. We all know that the reason why certain animals are not kosher is because when you eat an animal, it becomes part of your flesh and blood. And if the animal doesn't have good tendencies, good nature, then the Torah doesn't want us to eat it because it doesn't want us to shear those tendencies. So the question is, if the Ra'ah has such good eyesight, why is it not kosher? And the Chassidic masters tell us something so beautiful. That the problem with the Ra'ah and why it's not kosher is because it's all the way in Babylon and it can see 500 miles into Israel, but what does it see in Israel? It only sees a dead carcass. There's so many other things happening in Israel. There's so many other beautiful things to shear, to know, to do, happening, creating. But no, what does it see from 500 miles away? It spots a dead carcass. And what the Torah is saying is you can't eat this animal. Because if the tendency of the animal is only to be able to see negativity, to be able to see something that is bad, then it's not good for us to intake it and to eat it. The Baal Shem Tov says something fascinating. It says when the Jewish people came to the place Mara, and in Mara they couldn't drink the water. Why? Ki marim heima, because it was bitter. So the simple translation means the water was bitter, so they couldn't drink it. But the Baal Shem Tov says if that would be the case, why does it say heima? And the Baal Shem Tov answers that what the Torah is telling us is something very profound. The reason why the Jews couldn't drink the water is because they were bitter. And because when you're bitter, everything around you tastes bitter. When you have a negative outlook and always see the negative, then everything around you is the same way. You think about what's going on in the world today and the demonization of Israel, especially by some of our own brethren, our Jewish people. They could sit in America, in the USA, in Boston, in New York, in LA, in Chicago, and it's thousands of miles away till Israel, but instead of seeing the technology, the science, the medicine, the way there's so many people of different faiths that live in Israel, the way there's people of different colors that live in Israel, the way everyone lives in harmony, the way Israel allows everyone to vote, the dedication, the devotion that a country that's 75, 80 years old has been able to grow in such a remarkable way is unbelievable. There's no country as young as Israel that's GDP and its development in the free world and the first world countries is like Israel. But they sit in America, they sit in Boston, they sit in New York, wherever it may be, and what do they see? Just like the Ra'ah, the bird that sat in Babylon and looked into Israel and all it saw was a dead carcass. They don't see the positivity. they don't see the good things. They only see the negativity. Of course, nothing's perfect. Not Israel's perfect, not America's perfect, not I'm perfect, not you're perfect. But what the message the Torah is telling us is, see the positive, see the good. There was a disciple of the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe. His name was Reb Shmuel Munkes. Reb Shmuel Munkes was a comic. He was a very holy, spiritual man, but he liked joy and fun and finding humorous ways to bring something out, an anecdote. So one time, we lived in there was a little shtetl, and there was a Maggid. The Maggid was someone who would come and would preach to the people. He came before Rosh Hashanah, and he started preaching, and he told, it was a simple town of simple people who were illiterate, didn't know much, but they served God with a full heart, they cared, they loved God, they tried their best to keep Shabbos, to keep kosher, to study whatever they could, to say Psalms. And he came in, and he laid it into them, this preacher. He spoke to them, and all he had to say was, you're good for nothings, why don't you do this better, and you know where your place is going to be, you're not pious, you're not righteous, on and on and on and on. That night he comes back to his inn, and he goes to sleep, and suddenly he has a knock on his door, and he opens up the door, and this man, Shmuel Munkes, the disciple of the Alter Rebbe, is there with a big chalif, a big knife, which with you slaughter an animal, and he starts sharpening. He says, what are you doing it? He says, I'll tell you the truth. You know, it's before Rosh Hashanah. And tradition has it, we were taught that before Rosh Hashanah, you go to the graves of the righteous to pray. So he says, okay, so why don't you go? He says, listen, we're in a little shtetl. There's no righteous people here. You even told us how we're all negative people and we all do things wrong. So we figured that how are we going to make sure that before Rosh Hashanah, we could pray at the grave of a tzaddik? So I figured I'm going to bring my knife, I'm going to slaughter you, I'll bury you in our city, and we'll have a righteous person to go and to pray by. Now this guy sees him sharpening his knife, and he starts getting jittery. He says, well, I'm not so righteous, you know. He says, no, it's okay, you don't have to be so righteous, but it's better than us. And he's going on and on, he keeps on sharpening. Finally the guy says, he blurts out, he's so scared, he says, no, I'm not righteous at all, I did this sin and that sin and this sin. So Shmuel Munkes looks at this guy, puts down his knife, he says, who gave you the permission to come into our town and to belittle these sincere Jews who love God and embrace Him with all your heart? And what he was trying to tell this guy is, no one's perfect. But if all you see is negativity, if all you see is like that raw bird where you're in Babylon and you see in Israel the carcass that's dead, then your view of the world is totally wrong. We have to see things in a positive way, especially when it comes to our brothers and sisters, especially when it comes to the Holy Land of Israel. This Shabbos is the Shabbos we bless the new month of Elul, which means that Rosh Hashanah is 4 weeks and 3 days away from today. It's a special Shabbos when we bless the new month. We say the whole Psalms, and we begin preparing for Rosh Hashanah. The Sephardim, on Tuesday, I think, will begin saying Slichot. So, all the way from beautiful and sunny Cape Town, South Africa, I wish you each and every one of you a Shabbat Shalom. I look forward to seeing you next week. May God bless you, and may it be a beautiful and pleasant Shabbat.